Is there a goal to our existence? And if so, what is it? This may be the question. Human beings have wondered about this from the dawn of consciousness. Where we're going has been even more important than why we're here. You may ask 100 different people and get a different answer every time. But one thing is clear, there is an ingrained desire to walk a path towards the possibility of our own wholeness. That's what we sense this goal may be. It's a call we sometimes completely oblivious to, a call we'd rather ignore or that we can't even sense at all. But it is inside, somewhere, in each and every one of us, and when it surfaces, it manifests as the need to become something more. This wholeness is hard to define. It doesn't have to be something that flips the world upside down, but it may flip our psyche upside down once approximated. It requires transformation of our current self, and that may be painful and uncomfortable too. We often construct ourselves around beliefs we don't really feel to be right, or fall into self-deception that's hard to dissolve. We don't really know ourselves most of the time. When we strive to know, that's where the growth begins. The pattern of the hero's journey encountered in fairy tales from time immemorial is a reflection of the process of individuation, a walk in the path towards psychic wholeness. We projected the qualities we wish to manifest in ourselves onto exceptional beings in religion, society, and fictional stories. But this ideal often serves as an inspiration to get closer to something that's, quite frankly, unachievable for most of us. It's kind of the point too. Would Christ be unique if everyone could turn into Christ? An inferiority complex in relation to superheroes is sort of implied and necessary to an extent. After all, it means that there is space for transformation available. But it can also be discouraging. Many of the divine beings are exactly that, divine, superhuman, unrelatable. Perhaps some of them used to be human, but they're not anymore. This gap is a reflection of individual experience. Sometimes parents have great expectations from their children which they base on their relationships with other humans or inner unaccomplished dreams. They expect the children to fit this model even though it's quite impossible at the time. Even though they too were children and teenagers once, they forgot what they were like or lost the connection to that stage of their lives. This also contributes to the reason why teenagers have always felt alienated from the world. They also left the world of children but haven't entered the world of adults yet, so they don't belong anywhere yet. This resembles the position of the hero in the struggling phase. This alienation could be equated with having to fall into the abyss before transformation may occur. Children play with children, adults work with adults because alike seeks alike. But children venerate adults and adults venerate God because that's what drives growth. It means to become something we know we could be but aren't yet. However, there are heroes that never achieve divinity or greatness despite having achieved individuation. They still complete the hero's journey. Great suffering drives them to transform, which culminates in a feat that marks the completion of their path towards wholeness. Arguably, this equates with greatness, but viewing the story from a human perspective, there is a tragic tinge to it. The ego would certainly view this as a failure even, and it hits close to home. Today we feel more alienated than ever, but that inner need to change is never stifled. It evolves. Just like Rome had its Hercules-like beings capable of rising to heaven, a hero of our era has become the insignificant Sigma character. The rise of the Sigma characters is an expression of not giving up despite feeling alienated, but contrarily, taking advantage of the alienation. They embody the hope that even a good-for-nothing can take the reins of his fate into his own hands and conquer his insignificance. The insignificant hero has become an accurate, albeit unpalatable depiction of individuation. He's not the last, but nor is he the first. Perhaps the world won't bow before him, he may be forgotten soon, or no one will ever know him, but he sticks true to what he holds dear. Over time, heroes have become increasingly human. In ancient stories, they performed miracles or were born divine already. Despite their sufferings, there was a predisposition to greatness. But as humanity got disillusioned with religious figures, even superheroes have become more humanized. We added tragic backstories, insanity, and an overall dilution of the divine character. We can no longer seek comfort in the divine characters we lost sincere faith in after all, and we can't turn into them ourselves unless we risk inflation. The insignificant hero is also a reflection of this era, a depressing world where everyone is on their own. Perhaps this turn of events is somewhat tragic, And well, we had it coming due to our lackadaisical character, but as we enter this abyss of alienation, a great opportunity to integrate our shadow also arises. We can see all the wrongs we have been ignoring. Depravities are a symptom of disintegration, and so the overly liberal ideology rises too, to wake us up to the consequences of leaving everything on its own without cooperation and structure. We have fallen asleep in the abyss. Now is the time for each insignificant hero to rise on his own. Only collectively can we once again repair the damage. But it has to begin from the individual. Otherwise, we will be collectivized, but without retaining our individuality. And that is the greatest threat of our era. When we look at our lives, they often seem insignificant, but humanness has always held a special place in mythology, because that's what we are the definition of after all. Even Buddha said that to be born human is better than to be born in higher or lower realms, as that provides insight into both bliss and suffering, and thus facilitates achieving nirvana. The insignificant human stood in the midst of gods and demons from the beginning of time, negotiating peace between demons and deities, dying in the wars of God, building palaces for kings, praying for salvation of the nation, only to be forgotten. For a greater cause, humans whose names will never be known have been achieving superhuman feats for centuries. They never turned superhuman themselves, though, and so the center of the human universe, much like the self, the center of the human psyche, the guiding light of our society, is the insignificant hero. They're both something that cannot be directly known, but without them, the whole thing would collapse. Construction workers, electricians, farmers, to name a few, their faces rarely make the news. They never sat on thrones or possessed political power. Some of them make toilets, some make roads, others drive buses, assemble cars or pack furniture, paint houses or cut trees, look after our children or cook our food. They're dying in wars, they're breathing in chemicals or are jumping into fires. We almost never see them, but without them, the whole world will collapse. Some of us go on to achieve wide recognition for our actions, discovering a cure, winning a match, negotiating peace between nations, all with a stamp of one's name on it. But the countless of anonymous individuals' actions stand behind those stamps. If you think about some of the most famous celebrities, their lives too are part of an unbreakable chain. Without the unknown people to venerate them, even despite their feats, their name wouldn't be recognized. Let's say those unknowns hadn't worked on farms that produce the food the celebrities consume, and so they would be starving, and so they would never have become celebrities in the first place, as their primary concern would be to obtain food. There is no such thing as an insignificant hero. Our world is an intricate machine, but no machine could be called a machine without an assembly of cogs. Each and every one of us is a hero of not only our own story, but of the tale of this world. A lone cog is a cog and doesn't make a machine. And the cog fulfills its purpose when it's moving, and with the movement of each cog, the whole machine can also fulfill its purpose. Recognition isn't necessary for significance. The seemingly insignificant hero, the Sigma character, is the one that achieves individuation. Beyond his outer persona, facing his shadow, he treads his own path. Joe from Blade Runner 2049 is led to believe that he's a special replicant that was born, but in reality he's simply set up as an unwitting pawn used by larger forces. He's not predisposed to great things, and neither does he come to achieve grandiosity from an objective perspective. In the end though, his actions bring hope to the world of replicants, even though he himself dies alone. Thanks to his sacrifice, Deckard reunites with his daughter, who is deemed to be the chosen one. He undergoes a trial that no one bats an eye about. And we can relate. Even though Joe is the protagonist, he's not the hero of the story, but he chooses to be the hero of his own story. Despite the surrounding emptiness, he finds the true meaning of his life and follows it wholeheartedly. He thus realizes his full potential, achieving individuation. The tragic ending then seems irrelevant. What is it worth to be remembered if one hasn't acted in accordance with oneself? What does oblivion matter if one has discovered and fulfilled one's true purpose? Our fate perhaps isn't written in the stars, but neither can it be found in the nuclei of ourselves. Joe reminds us that there is a voice within that speaks, and more importantly, that we know it's true. In the manga Berserk, we encounter a slightly more sculpted example of the struggle that individuation actually is. We can choose to give in to instinct and turn into beasts, forgetting the troubles of human heart. Or we can choose to obtain superhuman power, but pretty much with the same result. To choose to be human is the hardest decision, but it's the one that can lead to wholeness. This is also why Dark Souls reap so much success too. The main character is an insignificant nobody that just keeps dying to seemingly impossible challenges, but then he makes it because he keeps trying. His identity is irrelevant. What sets him apart is the position he chooses to stand for in the world, and that alone changes it. He retains his humanity despite the difficulties, and not only that, he becomes a human that decides to grow. But such characters can also fall prey to certain vices, like seclusion. The risk is that projecting our shadow, we might fail to see it in ourselves. In Taxi Driver, the protagonist's seclusion leads to the development of self-righteousness, which makes him take a position of savior and martyr. He's strengthened by getting rid of whom he saw as the bad guys. As such, turning hypocritical, he became one of them in his judgmental seclusion. That's because he acts superficially. His true wish is to fit in, but he resents the society for his own loneliness. God from Berserk is standing on the line, always. Anytime he may either fall into deep nihilism and destroy himself completely, or get consumed by rage and destroy everything around. But he doesn't. As long as he has his sword, unless it's taken from him or he discards it himself, he will walk his own path. His sword is the symbolic representation of his true self. That's why, even when he loses everything, he will keep going on with his sword, and that's how it's been so far. Therefore, the major threat that Sigma characters face is themselves. Their characters build around their inner strength of spirit that rises from despondency. Losing spirit therefore equates to losing life force, which in this case means development of antisocial tendencies, as seen in American Psycho, nihilistic tendencies that could lead to suicide, like in Demons, in the character of Nikolai Stavrogin. Everybody in the West knows Shakespeare's name, but who was he really? As a human being, what did he think? What did he feel? Can we find his whole soul in his writings? Perhaps bits of its reflection, but the whole picture and the core escape us. Do the Aboriginals know Shakespeare? Can we equate recognition with the extent of our greatness? In 1,000 years perhaps, or after a single event that may change the world, we never know, even the most significant of us will remain nothing but dust. There's no doubt Shakespeare's work is astounding and has heart and meaning. Shakespeare is just a name now. It's not just his work. Its greatness is a side effect of him having walked the path of his soul. That's what the insignificant hero represents, and that is true greatness.